Nick Baldwin for SevereMMA here with Coach Eddie Cha, who trains down in Scottsdale, Arizona at Ready MMA with some of the top fighters in the world, including Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, who's coming off a big win in the main event of UFC Greenville. First round knockout over Renato Moicano. Eddie, first of all, I appreciate the time. We'll talk about Dan Moret's fight. It goes down tomorrow night here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Before that, we'll go in chronological order. I want to ask you about Korean Zombie. This was a big win for him, a very important win for him, getting back on track from that loss to Yair Rodriguez last November. First of all, talk about the performance, that punch, that knockout, the follow-up strikes. Could it have gone any better for Chan Sung Jung?
No, not at all. I don't think he took a single punch. So I mean, it's pretty much what you want: winning a fight without injury and performing and getting a knockout like that against number 5 guy in the world. It was flawless.
And I know the color commentator that night, Michael Bisping, said watching the replay on the broadcast that he said, if any boxing coach out there will be proud to see this or happy to see this. So I mean, as his boxing coach, as his head coach, I mean that punch. Again, just sort of Bisping's word, it was pretty perfect.
No, it was flawless. I mean, as much as credit as I would like to take, it's pretty much all him. I mean, we do a small part of the pie, but at the end of the day, the fighters have to execute, the fighters have to react, and they have to respond and everything else. And it's something that we've been practicing, countering the jab, countering kicks and stuff like that. And he just happened to see a jab right off the bat while he wasn't moving. We were expecting him to move a little bit more in the first round, and I thought he was going to get a knockout in the third round. Yeah, he saw that pitch, that first, it's being up 3-0 on a count with bases loaded, and he saw that jab, in which we repped hundreds of times a day, and he just took it home.
You got a little emotional after the fight. I think he did too. I think the whole corner did. Just talk about that and why that was the case.
It was really weird because my wife, it was the first time that she was able to come travel with me to fights, and we were walking out. We looked over. His wife and my wife were both crying, so I kind of held back the tears already. And before camp started, him, his wife, and his kids were staying with me at my house for about a month, and so we got really close. And we knew how big the next fight was, and especially the way the Yair fight ended, and it was really hard to watch. And his wife was really worried about him and stuff like that. So, as a coach, you feel somewhat responsible, kind of like your kid. And we didn't want him to get hurt. And I knew he was going to do well and he's going to win, but you just never know. And so just seeing them getting so emotional, and then how he won, because win or lose, he usually goes to the hospital every time. And when he saw me, he just kind of yelled, and when I grabbed him, he started getting emotional, and I got emotional. And then it was probably the second time I've ever cried when we won. The first one got a little emotional with Henry Corrales when he knocked out Pico. Those was like last 12 fights, everything we worked on to get to where Henry was at, just flashed within a few seconds. And so that was really emotional for us. And then this was the other one, is that I was so happy for him. I saw his wife crying, I saw my wife crying, so that's kind of why we got emotional. And then after the interview, when he was just saying this win today, who I am today because of me, and I got emotional again. Then he grabbed me, he got emotional, I got emotional. So it was kind of like a chain reaction. He got emotional first.
Put the blame on Korean Zombie, but there's nothing wrong with being emotional after a big win. So can you talk about the importance of that fight? Because some fights, they kind of are just wins or losses. The impact isn't quite as big as in some fights, but coming off that loss to Yair, he was up on the scorecards, gets knocked out literally with 1 second left in the fight. How important was this win for him to get back on track?
I think it's definitely huge. I think any fight, whether it's a regional fight or especially in the UFC and the top tier level of organizations, it's always huge. But when you're in the top 10 bracket, looking to break top 5, and then if you win this one, you're 1 or 2 fights away from the title. It's huge. And these guys are fighting for double the pay or half the pay if they lose, and so that makes a huge difference. And every fight is huge, but this one was definitely special, taking out a number 5 guy and then getting one step closer to that title shot.
Zombie said after the fight that he doesn't really care who he fights. He's just looking for exciting fights, looking for that next step up. Now that you've had a week to sort of process the win, what could be next for him, Is there anything that stands out as far as where he sits, what should be next for the Korean Zombie?
We did that post interview, and I still stand by that answer. And I think he beat the number 5 guy fairly easily. So 4, 3, 2, or 1 is what we're really looking at, and then looking at availability, of course, and things like that. But yeah, he honestly does not care as long as it's a higher ranked opponent. That's who he wants. He wants the toughest fights, and Sean Shelby and Dana White said the same thing. He goes, man, it doesn't always have to be wars, and that's how he is who he is. You know what I mean? And so yeah, I think any fight's exciting with him. I think he's number 3 on the bonus behind Cerrone and Loizain, and you know, I think he had 8 or 9 bonuses out of 7 fights, so he's an exciting fighter.
It's a bit of a fan favorite, just a little bit.
Yeah, 100%.
You mentioned, as you said, he beat number 5 Renato Moicano, so you want 1, 2, 3, or 4. A win over one of those fighters would probably put him next for the title. I mean, do you think he could be 1 win away from fighting for featherweight gold?
I believe so. If he has another performance like that, it's pretty hard to deny him, you know. But it's a stacked division. You just never know how it's going to go. I think Volkanovski's next for sure. He definitely deserves it. And then I think after that, it's kind of wide open. So
I'm quickly just sort of on your thoughts on the top of the division. We have Holloway Edgar. Who do you think wins that fight? And then if Volkanovski fights the winner, who after those fights, who do you think sort of emerges the champ? What's your gut feeling?
Yeah,
close fights, but
I don't like to say anything on film, but Holloway's pretty tough to beat, man. I think Edgar's a stud, and he's definitely a champion, but Holloway's a tough matchup against anybody. I think he probably has a little edge against both of them.
So maybe Holloway Korean Zombie after one more win in 2020.
I would love to see that. I would love to see that. I think stylistically, you know, that would be a super exciting fight.
It'd be one of the best fights in the UFC, I feel.
100%, I think so.
Let's talk about Dan Moret's fight. He's taking on Jared Gordon tomorrow night here at UFC Minneapolis at the Target Center downtown. Important fight for him just because things haven't gone his way in the UFC. Gordon's also on a bit of a skid, so kind of a big fight for both of them. They both need to get back on track, and unfortunately for them, only one does. What do you see in Moret's game that he can use in this fight with Gordon to win this fight, and where are some of the challenges that Jared may present?
I think both these guys are fighting for their jobs right now. You know, everything they literally worked for in their MMA career kind of boils down to this one right here: who stays and who might get potentially cut. So I know they're both going to fight for their lives out there. Dan's improved immensely. I literally thought he was minutes away from winning that fight. It was super close. He dropped him in the first and did a lot of damage. Some say that he potentially won that fight too, so you just want to never leave it to the judges. But Gordon's a phenomenal fighter. He's got tons of heart. He throws super hard. He's a BJJ black belt. He's from a great camp, so we're expecting a really, really good fight. But Dan, this is his hometown. He's from Minnesota, so I know he's going to put on a show, and he's mentally, literally, really, really focused for this one. I mean, to say he trained harder for this fight than any other, I don't think you can train any harder than these guys do. You know, they give it 100% every single time, and so can't say they train hard. He always trains hard. All our guys train super, super hard. It's just about performing on that time and that day. But I think he's going to bring it. I really do.
Fighting in his home state, does that add more pressure or more motivation, bit of both, or kind of neither?
It depends on the individual, I think. He's been super relaxed this week. I think he's enjoying being at home, and I know it's always been a dream of his to fight here back in Minnesota. So when he got that call, he was so excited, and I was so excited for him too. And I want this win more than anything for him. I mean, he's such a stand-up guy, and how hard he's worked. You know, sometimes you don't get the W, but this win it's really special. Like, I want this win for him, and I think he's going to win. He's going to bring it home.
Well, Eddie, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it, and best of luck to you cornering Dan Moret tomorrow night. And I know Drakkar Klose, your fighter as well. He fights Beneil Dariush in a couple weeks. Best of luck with that as well.